And we are back with JZ94.5's Tabari Daniels. So, since the pandemic hit, I've kind of been thinking about the role of radio in our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think radio can do now that other forms of media can't do? I mean, to me, riding a car, listening to a DJ you love is sort of a communal experience.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
comforting. It's like they're with you. They're in the car with you. I mean,
Right.
what do you think radio can do now that other forms of media can't?
Well, I tell you what, Dave. Crazy thing now is obviously people are getting a lot of information from a lot of different sources or a lot of different places, not necessarily sources. But when you look at so much misinformation, sometimes it takes a radio station to actually decipher a lot of that stuff. Being that we are regulated by the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, so we have a responsibility that we can't just blurt things out and say certain things just for shock value.
As a trusted member of the local media community,
Oh yeah.
people put a lot of faith in a lot of stuff that you
Oh
guys
yeah.
talk about and say, and so therefore there's a believability element
Yeah.
there, and that helps get important words out when they need to be gotten out, right?
Definitely. Definitely. The public trust is incredibly important. We've just, like I said before, we just went through everything last year from the pandemic to an election to a disaster with Hurricane Zeta. So in many cases, when other forms of media don't tend to fall short, you go through a storm, you got a radio. As long as you got batteries, you got a radio. You don't have to worry about Wi-Fi and everything else. At least a voice to calm you down and walk you through and give you some ideas on how to sustain yourself in spite of a disaster is incredibly important. Hearing a voice talking to you and being able to talk back in real time, that's been the strength of a lot of radio.
So, speaking of the station, what's the music world been like since the pandemic hit?
Oh wow. Well, obviously a lot of record recording artists aren't touring like they would normally tour with the big festivals and the big concerts. We get some still coming through and do smaller things. Some of the clubs locally have been a little daring and having smaller events and smaller things. I was just at the ATV park a while ago with the band Rehab and had a turnout there. Then a few times we've had everybody from the Yin Yang Twins to some everybody here within the past 3 months or so.
Were there any artists that really broke out in your mind in 2020? I mean, it seems like 2020 would have been such a down year for music, but I know lots of artists still found ways to get their music out, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, having that social media footprint, I'm going to be honest with you, that's been the thing to keep your buzz going, because you had the versus battles with a lot of the artists that come on and they kind of sing their songs back and forth against each other. If I had to narrow down an artist that really had a good breakout year, at least in the genre of R&B and hip hop and such, I would probably say somebody like a Megan Thee Stallion. She had an incredible year this year. She's like the queen of hip hop music right now. I would also say, ooh, that's tough. There are a lot of them. I would say she would be the number one. She'd be the number one off the top of my head.
Are there any new artists, either nationwide or even locally here on the coast, that you're really excited about?
Yeah, there are a lot of new artists. It's amazing how people are really diversifying. No matter if you're talking music or you're talking other industries, people are really diversifying and finding they got other talents. Locally in South Mississippi, there's a guy by the name of Young Blue, right out of Mobile. Did a song with Drake, who obviously is the number one hip hop guy right now. And he has really, really built up a strong following, and now his song is really carrying into 2021. Locally, there's a guy by the name of Chad Cox and Jay Hefe. I think both of those guys they're doing some really great things.
One thing I wanted to ask you about is this new big entertainment center that they were talking about putting on the Gulf Coast. Is that still moving forward? Is that stalled due to the pandemic?
No.
What's going on with that?
As far as I know, and I'm no expert on it, but
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to people. I've been knowing about this for a little while because I think it's Universal Music Group. One of the record companies are putting it, are behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a go. A lot of that is planned for. Everybody's expecting the pandemic and things to, be subsided by the end of this year and sometime later this year or whatever. So that's a go. That's a long-term plan, and that's still happening.
Let's talk a little bit about the news and things going on right now. Obviously, every day has been pretty much insane since we last spoke.
Yeah.
What do you make of the current climate in America?
Man, I tell you, Dave, the election, although polarizing, I think that it's really giving people a different outlook on what we thought of Americans. I know we all have our own piece of America and how we believe the country is. But the thing I think right now, the whole dichotomy of, okay, you got to be either this or either that, I think it's getting to be played out. You don't have to just be Republican. You don't have to just be Democrat. You don't have to just be liberal or conservative. We are multifaceted.
The extremes on either side tend to shout the largest, but I think maybe we'll get back to a point where the moderates, the majority of the people, kind of in the middle. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? I agree with you, and I hope that is the case. I think most people are moderate. I think that the problem is a lot of the extremists are the ones who make the news.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to get over the fact that, okay, just because they're making the news doesn't mean that they speak for everybody. And we've got to get beyond that. We've got to say, okay, yeah, they're extreme. This is a little too much. This isn't where I want this country to go. And this isn't good for the country.
You're active in the day-to-day life in Biloxi Gulfport. I mean, what do you take away from your daily interactions with people? I mean, for myself, there seems to be kind of a little bit of a disconnect between what I see on social media and my daily life with people. Do you see that same kind of difference?
I think we're putting too much stock into social media. Let's be honest. Most of the people who are our friends aren't actually our friends. Most of us don't look as good as our filters allow us to look. And when it comes to making
speak for yourself, Tabari.
And most of the comments that we make, we wouldn't be making them if we were face to face. You get a lot of courage when you're behind those keystrokes.
Well, the reason why I ask is you recently posted the question on social media: what do our children take from this regarding the Capitol riots? What should we all take away from the events of that and the past year, and what positives can we carry into the new year?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I'm a father, so my beautiful daughter's in middle school, and she asks a lot of those questions. I think that when it comes to kids, in this day and age, unfortunately, they've got access to everything. They've got access to bad videos. They've got access to dirty versions of songs.
Yeah.
It is important for us as the adults to constantly teach and show and explain everything that they're seeing, because our children are taking in way more information subliminally than we as kids ever took in, so.
After so much pain and so much division, how do you think we start bridging the gap? We talked a little bit about the gap earlier. How do you think we start bridging that gap?
I think it's just understanding that we have way more in common than we do not in common. At the end of the day, people want to have a good time. They want peace, and they want to be able to go home, relax, and be safe.
So what do you have coming up? What are you excited about?
Oh man, there's so much coming up. So obviously the industry is expecting, things to loosen up sometime around spring, summer, and fall. So South Mississippi has everything from, I know this month there's an MMA thing going on at the Coliseum. Reba McEntire is coming down here in July, hopefully. KISS is coming later this year as well. You look at the Mississippi Aquarium, shout out to them. They've done such a great job. 4 new dolphins.
So if people want to follow you on social media, what are your handles? What do you got going on?
Yeah, oh man, see me on Facebook as Tabari Beyond. Also on Instagram. I'm also a host for OnlyFans Friday, which every Friday we're in a different city and we're showcasing an artist. So that's been pretty cool. I've been doing that for the past 4 years. I'm sorry, 4 months. So just Tabari Beyond on all social platforms.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Sadly, I mean, as much as I've enjoyed talking to you, that's all the time we got on the show.
Oh, come on.
So we done. Yeah,
it's so fast, so soon.
Yep.
Thanks, Dick.
So it goes quick when you're having fun. So thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, Tabari Daniels.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.